kind of freaking out. It's closing in. It's coming near. It may get to him. Uh-oh. So the thought was, and look, I held out no hope for this, but some thought went into folks saying, maybe this is a moment Trump's going to come out and say, well, hey, we need to, just take this a little serious. We're going to start, making sure that everyone wears masks. And as the leader of the country, maybe don one of the masks for a short period of time to show people that, hey, it's okay. You don't have to shoot someone at the dollar store because they asked you to wear a mask. You don't have to start a riot at the ice cream shop because someone asked you to wear a mask. You don't have to call the 17-year-old girl behind the counter, names that you would be very unhappy if someone called your 17-year-old daughter. And, over the weekend, you saw all these reports of us just being Americans. That's right. We were just being our exceptional selves. Greedy, selfish, egotistical, self-centered, wrong-headed, ridiculous, moronic, asinine. Go down the list. I mean, we could come up with a bunch of words to describe what we, the American people, can be like when we're being exceptional. Like when you shoot somebody at the dollar store because they had the audacity to, ask your child to wear a mask. Or you got to take your rocket launcher into the subway because you know what? You might not get the right pickles on your egg sandwich. Just how crazy of a society have we become? So there was this brief moment after all of the weekend of insanity, all of the ridiculousness of, if you watch Twitter, you saw all the videos coming out of, as states are opening up, we're not paying attention. We clearly are not going to do this well. We are clearly going to have to suffer. And in a much bigger way. I mean, there's talk of, there are people, and there are people who are really struggling with this. If you looked at the videos, it's not those folks. Evidently, Mother's Day was not probably the right day to open up your restaurant because everybody went. And there was no social distancing. Most people didn't have masks, which tells you, because understand, the mask doesn't protect the person wearing it. The mask protects everyone else because the mask absorbs the water fluids that come out of your mouth that carry it around. So by not wearing a mask in public, what you're really telling everyone around you is, I don't really give a rat's behind about you. I don't care about anyone but myself, certainly not you. And that's very Trumpian, isn't it? It is exactly what we expect in the age of Trump. Most certainly what I had hoped at a very small level that maybe, hey, it's gotten close to home. This is a moment for Trump to go, hey, this is kind of serious stuff. So what did we get? Did we get? We got, evidently we have met the moment and we have prevailed. He's talking about testing. Evidently we've met the moment in history. We as Americans, we rose to the challenge. Yet, you're closing in on 80,000 people dying. We're going to easily hit 100,000 very soon. But we've met the challenge. And for him, it's all about sheer numbers. Because he claims that, we're testing more than anyone else in the whole world. Much better than everybody. When the reality is we're doing a little bit better than South Korea. But guess what? South Korea, they're not dying at the rate that we are. They don't have the number of infections per day that we're getting. Just kind of throwing that out there. But even still, with their 210 cases per million, South Korea tests about 18,400 people per million. We're at 27.4 per million, but we've got 4,100 cases per million. So we're literally getting killed on this But hey, we're still testing more. No, we're not the best in the world, as he likes to claim that we're number one. Everyone loves us. No, Austria has that title. They're testing about 35,900 people per million. And Singapore is still beating us at 30,800 per million. But hey, don't let a good story go to waste. Don't let facts get in the way of your narrative, which is we're number one, damn it. Thump the chest, go out to the restaurant, get your froyo. Don't worry about that poor sucker next to you. Breathe all over him, cough all over him. Do what you got to do because, hey, you're American. It's all about you. It's all that matters. Just you. Let that sink in for a second. I mean, because I'm literally, because we're not going to do this well, are we? We're going to have a rough fall. And if you look at what you saw this weekend, us being us, it's going to be a rough week, a rough year. And the White House did signal that they're going to want people to wear masks. Everybody, evidently anyone who is not at their desk at the White House will have to wear a mask, with the exception of, do you need me to say it? With the exception of Trump. Trump will not wear a mask. It ain't happening. Don't even think about it. And this is one of those moments where, again, comes back to leadership, or lack thereof, or failure thereof, however you want to frame that. Our failure in chief is leading as one would expect. But I'll tell you, for a brief moment, I had hoped that he would come out and do something different. Instead, he went completely the other direction, flipped out because a reporter had the audacity to ask a question of, because Trump's got this mindset that everything's a competition. We're doing the best. We're doing more. We're better. We're, smarter. We're la, 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 la. So this reporter, the CBS News reporter, Wei Zhejiang, asked, "Hey, why does that matter? Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're seeing more and more cases every day?" And he, kind of flipped, and then responded, "Maybe that's a question you should ask China." Now, is that a throwback at her because she's Chinese? Okay, maybe. But she pressed him, and she's like, well, why would you aim that at me? And again, he comes back with it. It's a nasty question, because someone had the audacity to question his motive, and his motive is to continue to push this narrative that we're beyond this. We're past it. We've made it. It's over. And I'll tell you, that is the absolute worst frame to have, because he wants to move down the road. He wants the economy to reopen, as we all do. But what's the point in me spending a couple of $1,000s in lost wages and in lost savings so that we could all stay home and shelter in place? What the hell was the point of that if we're simply going to fling the doors open and have every nitwit Walmart shopper bumping up against you everywhere you go? Because I got to have my frozen yogurt. It's just nuts. And now you see Trump, again, leading the way. You now see Elon Musk, who evidently today opened his factory in Fremont, California, and basically just dared local officials to arrest him. Now, here's my view on this. A lot of people are going to go, well, he wants to open his factory, and this is, him just flexing his muscle because he's a rich guy. I see this as a little bit different. I'm seeing this as one of those weird moments, and I'm looking for a legal scholar to come on and explain this a lot better than I'm going to do. But I see this as one of these moments where we're going to push this freedom of contract idea that I've talked about, the liberty of contract argument of yesteryear. For those who don't know, 1897 to 1937 is what's known as the Lochner era. That was the time period that, because of this This Bake Shop Act that New York passed, limiting the number of hours that a bakery could compel their workers to work at 10 hours a day, 60 hours a week. This baker's like, screw you, I'm going to work them 70 or 80 or 100 because it's their freedom. And ultimately, it went to the Supreme Court, all the way through to the court system, and the Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment applied, due process, and they then used that decision for the next 30 years to strike down every maximum hour law, every minimum wage law, every child labor law, every safe working condition law, you name it. Anything that had to do with employment was immediately struck down as liberty of contract. This idea that if you're desperate enough and willing to work in crummy conditions and you agree to it, that's your right. And generally, I believe that you have the right to do dumb stuff. But that's only if you have an equal choice. I mean, people have to eat. And we're in this weird world where once the pendulum swings, as did in Lochner, there won't be alternatives. So we're seeing this push toward those days. We're seeing the freedom of choice argument. We're seeing it everywhere, in everything we do. You have the freedom to contract. And I see him wanting to push this. I see him begging the people of the state of California to arrest him, to take this kind of a case back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court to then rule that the state doesn't have the ability to force him to stay closed, and thus take us down a road where employment rights swing even further to the side of the employer. And this is the scary area in which we're heading, I fear. Because, during the Lochner era, they used that one decision to strike down more than, I think it's like 184 laws that states had the audacity to pass. States wanted to get kids out of the mines and get them in the classrooms. No, you can't mandate that. That's a violation of their liberty. And you can see this coming back. And we have a Supreme Court right now that I believe is amiable to it. I believe they are willing, ready, and able to rule on something like this that gives the power, again, back to employers where it belongs, in the master-servant relationship. And this is one of those key moments that if it goes the wrong way, and we've got a court, I believe, that's ready to bring back the good old days, this could be detrimental to all of us. Because if you get a case like this, what's that going to mean for the next time we have a virus outbreak? What's that going to mean for the next time we have unsafe working conditions? Especially as they've pretty much eviscerated the right to strike. Again, putting all of the power into the hands of the employer. The pendulum, never stays still. It swings from one side to the other. And right now, it's swinging to the extreme side of the employer class and of wealth. And if it continues to swing, you will then have no rights to a safe workplace. You will have no rights to a minimum wage or to maximum hours. There'll be no more overtime. And that's always been the goal, to undo those New Deal era regulations and undo that progress that was made, because they hated it then. The employer class hated FDR and hated the New Deal and the rights that working people got. And I know this is really, it could never happen. In my lifetime, I never thought you'd work more than 8 hours a day without getting overtime after 8. I actually, when I entered the workplace, couldn't imagine having a job that didn't have a defined benefit pension. I couldn't imagine going into the workplace as a young man and not having paid health insurance. What do you think 20 years holds for us? I firmly believe there'll be no more employment unless we change the laws, unless we strengthen them. What it will end up being is everybody's going to be their own boss, which means you're going to be desperate as hell. And you'll have the freedom to work for poverty wages in desperate conditions. Only you'll be the one holding the bag. And if you get hurt, heaven forbid, sorry, buddy, you made that choice. So if you decided to go to work during a pandemic and you got the corona, that's your fault. It's your freedom. And you look at right now what this administration is talking about doing, limiting liability for employers. It's all right down the same side of the road. Anyway, I got lots to get to, lots to talk about today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Orlando Riley is going to be here to share some thoughts on transit workers in New Jersey and the major obstacles they've faced. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1967. That was the day United Farm Workers Sons of Zapata joined with the Confederation of Mexican Workers in establishing an international picket line across the Rio Grande Valley. A push to organize farm workers at 6 major growers began the year before, in the spring of 1966. Wages in Starr County ranged from 40 to 85 cents an hour. Farm workers began their strike in June of 1966 for wage increases and union recognition. But growers would rather see their crops rot than recognize the union. They did grant wage increases, but immediately ran to the courts for injunctions. One district judge outlawed all picketing, while police instructed county workers to spray the strikers with insecticide. That August, workers voted to organize with the United Farm Workers and began a pilgrimage march to the state capitol to popularize their cause. 15,000 workers and their supporters reached Austin on Labor Day to demand their right to organize. They returned to Starr County to continue their strike. The growers turned to Mexican commuters holding green cards to break the strike. The United Farm Workers began picketing at Roma and Rio Grande City bridges and were often successful in turning back green card workers. By May 1967, melon harvest had begun. After months of negotiations, picket lines went up on both sides of the international bridges. The picketing was 100% successful for 2 days, but the Mexican government and Starr County Sheriff's Department soon intervened to break up the picket lines. Texas Rangers were brought in to arrest and brutalize strikers. The strike was broken, but organizing continued throughout the region. Picketing across borders was itself an important act of international solidarity. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett, he was on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday, and he said, quote, "It is scary to go to work. I think that I'd be a lot safer if I was sitting at home than I would be sitting in the West Wing." He said the West Wing's a small, crowded place. It's a little bit risky to work there. And when I saw him say this, and he says he practices social distancing because, of course, it is a very close place to work. He wears a mask when necessary, I guess around others. But I saw this. He's like, "Oh, it's a scary place to work." I'm going, this is the White House. They test everybody religiously. If there's anywhere you want to work, if you have to, that I think is the place you'd want to be. The last place I think I'd want to be is driving a bus in New York City or New Jersey or in a crowded metropolitan area, because I'll tell you, I've been following these folks, and sadly, the number of people who have contracted the coronavirus and have died from this is just outrageous. And this is, again, one of these moments where you've got a guy sitting behind a desk complaining, "That's a little scary. I'm a little scared." While there are real people out there struggling and, well, dying. And here to share some thoughts on what we're seeing, I've asked Orlando Riley to come talk with me. He's the chair of ATU's New Jersey State Council. Orlando, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. How are you? Nice to talk to you.
I'm good. So what do you think of this? It's a little bit scary to work in the White House there in the West Wing, where it's a little crowded.
That's a little absurd if you ask me. It's unbelievable that someone would even say that.
But here's the thing, and I've been following the work that you guys are doing there in New Jersey, and I'll tell you, your union is doing some doing the Lord's work. Right early on, I saw you guys were handing out masks and gloves to try and protect your members. And good on you and good on your union for doing that. Walk me through what your members are going through every day right now.
Well, right now there's just so much anxiety amongst the members. It's really scary to get behind the wheel of a bus. We had the governor implement some precautions in, like some executive orders where passengers they have to wear a face mask to ride on the bus, and also to enter through the rear. But again, there's so much unknown about this disease, and you still have buses that sometimes they tend to get crowded because we're literally taking people, some essential workers, we're taking them to work, and they have to get to work. So it's really scary. We've had 315 total positives in New Jersey, in ATU in New Jersey, and we had 6 deaths. So they are extremely scared. They're terrified, actually, to go to work every day.
And just to get the things that you said, and it sounds so simple, to ensure that they have masks, to ensure that riders wear a mask, and to enter through the rear door. That sounds so simple, sounds so much like common sense, but I know it was a fight for you guys to win that.
Oh yeah, it was a fight. We pushed for this early on to wear masks, and that was before they were even available. We were able to secure some masks through our ATU, and the company, they were reluctant for us to wear masks at first, and they wouldn't provide them basically, and then we eventually started wearing them on our own, and then eventually everyone got on board and said that it was okay to wear masks when they were telling us not to at first. And then also we pushed really for the rear door entrance early on, and that was met with a lot of resistance. And eventually, they did come on board, and we were able to get those precautions in place.
Yeah, I had said right from the start that, for you guys, the bus drivers, the common sense, the smart thing to do here would have been completely seal off the bus driver from anyone else. And I've been saying this should be happening, long before the virus happened, because, bus drivers are often assaulted, they're often attacked, and to have them separated from everybody else just seems like a smart idea to me. But maybe, is it possible out of this horrible tragedy, maybe something like that happens?
Well, we have some type of on some buses. We have some areas that are sectioned off, but they're still not totally sectioned off. And hopefully, in the midst of this, we're still trying to get those buses that don't have it. We're trying to get them retrofitted with those plastic shields. But eventually, the goal is to have the driver totally secluded from the passengers. For safety reasons, and hopefully, this will be an opportunity for us to, really push that forward.
Because that just makes sense. I mean, it's one of those things. It just makes sense that you've got this person who's driving this bus by themselves through all hours of the day and night, and it just makes sense from a safety perspective.
Well, sometimes what makes sense to the people who are on the ground level doing the work in the field. Getting that to make sense to the people who are, up top, looking down, to get them to agree. That's usually the struggle.
Yeah, excellent point. And this is one of those moments where I always say, before you throw a hard time up in front of, why don't you go do it for a couple of days? Why don't we get this economic advisor here to the White House to go drive a bus and see what real risk is?
No, I don't think he'd get on board. If he got on, he'd probably get right off.
Sadly, you're probably right. Now, I know you guys haven't stopped your fight. I mean, this is, you got these couple of things which were fantastic, but you're now also fighting for hazard pay and a little and more. Because look, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everyone goes to work, goes home in the same condition, is safe, and their families are safe as well. Tell me, what are you fighting for now? I know the hazard pay is part of it. What else?
Well, that's a big part of what we're fighting for. We feel like the hazard pay is important because, again, Our members out here, they're driving every day. They're risking their lives, and there should be some compensation. Should be some compensation for that, and we feel strongly about it. We're pushing that. We don't have anything from our agency yet, in agreement with that, but we're working on it, and we're going to start a campaign very soon on that hazard pay.
Now, the idea being, as I understand it, there's a boatload of money from the CARES Act that that the New Jersey Transit has secured that could be used for this, right?
Yeah, I believe it was about 1.7, 1.4 billion that's going to New Jersey Transit. But again, where that money is earmarked for, we're not sure. But we do believe that that our members, particularly those people on the front lines, they should be able to receive some type of hazard pay from that CARES Act.
Now, I think all of the essential workers should have been, and this is one of those moments where I've been pushing this idea, and maybe it'll come along. I don't know. I'm of the mindset if that Trump and the Republicans are pushing to full bore to reopen the economy, that Democrats push to give workers a true choice to whether to go back to work or not. Make unemployment optional. If you don't want to go back, then you collect unemployment and you stay home. And if employers create safe workplaces and make it economically viable, then people go back to work, and hopefully we figure out how to deal with this virus and deal with this kind of a crisis in a way that's going to not just help companies but protect workers as well.
And I agree. And you made a great point. If the workplaces aren't safe, people won't come. People won't ride transportations. People won't do the things they used to do. So that's probably the most important part to me.
I mean, because at the end of it, I keep saying that, what good is hazard pay if you're only going to end up dead at the other end of it? You'll be the richest guy in the graveyard.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing, and this is where my point has been all along, is we know that we can do this right. Last week we had a friend from the Teamsters Union out in the western part of the country, out in Washington, who the meatpacking plant that his union represents, they handled it right. They haven't had any deaths. They've had a handful of people who have gotten sick, and they closed things down. They sanitized, they cleaned, they distanced, they did everything that you should have to do to ensure that your workplace is safe. And then just 15 minutes down the road, you got the Tyson plant where more than half of the people are infected. There have been people who have died, and they're closing up. There are ways of doing this stuff right.
Yeah, but again, you need reasonable people making smart decisions, and you have to take into account what people on the ground level who are doing it day to day, what they tell you. You have to believe them, and you have to care. And if you don't care, you're not going to make the right decisions for people. So I believe that you really need those type of individuals involved in the decision making. If not, we're not going to get anywhere.
Or you have to have a voice, and you have to be able to stand up and demand it. Because, as I say, nothing's ever given; it's only taken and demanded. And I think what you guys want is a perfect example of that. The fact that you guys stood with one collective voice and said, "We demand these things." I think that's important.
Absolutely. And earlier on, we were asking for testing, and we couldn't get the testing, so we ended up setting up testing in northern and southern region ourselves, and we tested over 400 of our members, which was great. And they were extremely. It was an extremely proud moment that those 2 days getting our members tested when they couldn't get tested.
I mean, but hold on, wait a second. I was told by this administration that anyone who wants a test can get one. They're available everywhere. We've got tons of them. They're there, Orlando.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Am I getting this wrong?
That's what they say. I mean, we hear that, but it's a difference when you're out here and you're trying to get it and trying to get the test. That's not the case.
I wanted to get your thought real quick. Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell have both talked about, whatever the next stimulus package might be. They have drawn kind of a red line in the sand, saying that any package done to help the states or to help hospitals or to help public transit or any of that is going to have to come with employer liability shields. Do you think that's a good idea? I've given my opinion already, but I'm curious if you think that that's a helpful thing.
I can't see how that would be helpful, but I don't know specifically what do they mean when they say employee shields from any liability at all. What do they mean?
That isn't that the question. And when they want liability protection for employers, my only assumption is if you get sick, you're on your own.
Wow, no, that would be a disaster. I mean, we have trouble now holding employers accountable for not implementing the proper safety protocols. And can you imagine if they had that, no liability? Wow, I can't even believe that they would present that.
But again,
me.
For me, it tells where their mindset is. Their
Absolutely.
mindset is we need to make as much money as we can, and if we have to screw over the workers to do it, that's what we're going to do.
That's pretty much it.
And, unfortunately for the vast majority of workers in this country, they don't have the protection of your members. They don't have a strong union that's going to go to bat for them. They don't have people like you who are going to go and argue with management and fight for their position and make sure that they get testing and they get masks and they get a say and they get, proper safeguards on the job. This is what I'm hoping this moment tells us. And the reason I think it's so important that you come on and you talk about the things that you guys have done, because I think the other 94% of the workforce in this country has got to hear that, hey, guess what? There's a way to protect ourselves, and that's by joining and forming unions like yours.
Absolutely. And just to think of all of the individuals out there who are still working and they don't have a union representing them, they don't have a voice, they don't have anyone to go into the office for them to demand proper PPE, to demand they're treated fairly. It's just, it's a scary thought that the overwhelming majority of the people out here, they don't have any type of voice, and it's sad. And hopefully, people realize that the power of unions and how important we are, and this is a perfect example of it today.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally an example of life or death.
Absolutely.
Doesn't get much simpler than that. But Orlando, I wanted to get you on to talk about what you guys have done. How can we help ensure that essential workers get that hazard pay and get those protections that they need? What are you suggesting we do?
All I can say is I would just say keep doing what you're doing. Keep being a voice for working people. Keep being a voice for unions. You're going to see a lot of campaigns out there advocating for hazard pay for all essential workers, and they deserve it. I mean, they're out there risking their lives. Bus operators, firemen, police, everyone that's out there really working in this pandemic to protect people, to move people, and is very important. So just keep doing what you're doing and being a voice for working people.
Yeah, two things I'd like to see happen. If you've got any way to move it forward, I'd love to see it. I would love to see someone start a campaign to end taxation of unemployment benefits. Ronald Reagan was the first one to tax unemployment benefits. It was a slap in the face then. It's a major slap in the face now and should be stopped immediately. If you want to help working families, you don't tax what little unemployment that they get. And also the idea that I had of we got to give workers a true choice. None of this when the employer calls you to come back, you got to go run into a dangerous workplace. Two things I would love to see move forward.
I would too. Absolutely.
Good stuff. Orlando, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and talk with us again soon.
I will. Thanks for having me, and nice to talk to you.
Good stuff. Orlando Riley, he's the chairman of the ATU's New Jersey State Council. Good stuff there. And I'll tell you, I've been following them for a while, and the work that this union has done to protect their members, second to none, and good on them. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. Working people love to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman, on the south side of Chicago, where workers made luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. As a depression swept the nation, workers had seen their wages slashed, but rents owed to the company owner George Pullman stayed the same. The strike won support from the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. The American Railway Union called for a boycott of all Pullman cars, and more than 250,000 railway workers participated in the work action against Pullman. The strike was crushed by legal injunctions and with federal troops. In a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, Eugene V. Debs was imprisoned for his support of the boycott. One prominent supporter of the strike was Chicago area Reverend William H. Cardawine. The Reverend supported the strikers from his pulpit. After the strike, his book, The Pullman Strike, helped spread the word of Pullman. In it, he warned, "We as a nation are dividing ourselves, like ancient Rome, into two classes, the rich and the poor, the oppressor and the oppressed. On the side of the oppressor, there is power and protection, class legislation, and military support. We are following in the tracks of ancient Rome," he wrote, "instead of learning lessons from her failures and defeats. No country can prosper, no government long perpetuate itself and its institutions, which does not administer judgment and justice alike to all its people." These words from Reverend Carwadine seem more relevant than ever today. Will we heed his warning? Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro was on Fox and Friends today. And again, it's another one of those moments where you've got an administration just out of touch. He said that the Sunday shows, it was a pity party yesterday, he said on the Sunday shows. This is not the Great Depression. Anybody who thinks this is the Great Depression doesn't understand either history or economics. He went on to claim, as you have to do when you're a Trump flack, that this is the greatest economy ever. He's built it. It's beautiful. It's tremendous. You know all of those things. He got that in there. But, the pity party part just grabbed my attention. There are 34 million people who are unemployed. 34 million people who are going to lose their health care, lose wages, and worry about, are they going to be able to keep food on the table, pay the rent? And yet you've got this guy, well, that's a pity party. Sad. Just insane. Just insane. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on how they're handling the pandemic and the fallout from it. I've asked our good friend Gary Dixon to come talk with us. Gary's the Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 959 out in Anchorage, Alaska. Gary, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to hear from you, Rick.
So I hope you're doing well. Hope everyone is safe. Hope your members are safe. Throw that out there first.
Yeah, they're doing, for the most part, everybody's doing fine. We've had some people not working, getting laid off, but, Alaska is a large state, but a small communities, and a little bit different. We've got a lot of the workers that are supplying all the grocery stores and the port of Anchorage, unloading all the trailers and goods and keeping that the store stocked and the packages delivered and the beer, wine, and spirits in the stores for people to have.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I've been going on this for a while, that we're now calling people who are forgotten or are marginalized or ridiculed or however you want to put it. We're now calling those folks essential and frontline heroes. I guess a global pandemic really kind of straightens out your priorities.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about how their goods and how their everyday essential needs get to the stores to where they can get them. From our drivers at UPS delivering all these packages that people are sitting at home ordering. to the groceries. I mean, it's everyday Americans. I mean, you were just talking about the Trump administration boasting about the greatest economy and the great Wall Street market. And I asked one of my members who happened to be a Trump supporter, I asked him, I said, well, how much money do you got in the stock market? He said, none. I can't afford to. I said, so what is that doing to help you?
And those of us who had money in the stock market, we took a major hit because of this. Because and we're not going to get into all the who did what and why, but because of the failure of this administration to react to this properly, most of us took a hit, and a fairly substantial one.
Yeah, we did. And hey, I would like to give a little shout out, if I could, Rick. We had our U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan on his Facebook page. Usually he does it on the Senate floor, but he gives an Alaskan of the Week acknowledgement. And last week, since he was here in Alaska quarantine, he gave his Alaska of the Week was Teamster Local 959 members for keeping Alaska goods and basically keeping things going for Alaskans.
Good on your members, and good on him for being smart enough to point that out.
Yeah, no, I'm very proud of our members. You know, I sit here and you watch all this stuff on TV, and I cannot believe, like, the nurses every day, Rick, going into a place where they know that every day they have a chance to catch something, this virus. I mean, to me, that is hero. That's a hero right there.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, we sit here, you know, I'm an old athlete back in the day, and people look up to athletes, and I get that. You know, they're on TV. I think we should rename it. It shouldn't be heroes for them. It should be, you know, you're envious. I think the heroes are these nurses. I mean, how touching is it some nights to see these men and women going to work every day, helping people out, trying to comfort them through all this stuff, and to watch them do it day in and day out, and the emotions they have. I mean, the nurses, the police officers, the firefighters, I mean, man, I tell you what, my hats are off to all of them.
Absolutely. And to do it in an environment where half the time you don't have the proper things that you need to protect yourself. I mean, I'm sure everyone saw the photos coming out of New York of you know, healthcare workers wearing garbage bags as protective gear. The stories of nurses and healthcare workers having to, you know, smear you know, hand sanitizer inside their mask so that they would be somewhat effective. You know, it's a shame that they aren't getting still now the things that they absolutely need.
I agree, and I think it's a shame that you know, for all these years, say since the 70s, you've seen these corporations move a lot of their operations over to China and these other places that are cheaper, and now we are basically sitting here with very little that we produce in the stuff that we need right now. It's pretty sad.
And that's one of the things that, you know, I gave Trump credit for in 2016. Of highlighting the fact that we're way too dependent on China, that we need to rebuild our manufacturing base, we need to have, you know, strong domestic production capabilities. I don't think he's done anything to move us away from that, but I think we have to highlight that, and I think we have to, as a country, and maybe this is the moment. I'm not 100% sure, but maybe this is the moment where we do wake up and realize that the couple of pennies we save for the cheap plastic crap from China that you get at the Walmart isn't worth it.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of faith in some of the people in politics that they will recognize. I'm sure they recognize it, but will it last? And that memory lasts with them after this year is over or the next year. Right. I think the almighty dollar kind of takes over.
This is where I think people like you and I have to remind them. And this is where the voters of this country have to remind them. And we vote for people who are going to move us in a direction to where maybe we reclaim some of our manufacture, or at least not lose what little we have. So I wanted to go a little bit more into, you know, because look, you represent all kinds of truck drivers and UPS drivers and, you know, grocery workers. You know, what are you guys doing to make sure that they're that their workplaces are safe. I mean, I've talked to leaders across the country who have shared the things that they've been able to accomplish. I'm curious what you guys have worked on.
We've our business agents are out there working with the companies that we have contracts with, where our members are working. I'll say, we've had a pretty good response from most of our contractors. I won't get into the bads. There's some that haven't really stepped up, and we've been all over them about it. I know that with two of the busing contracts, we've been contacting our state legislators for what's been going on there. But for the most part, I would have to generalize it and say that we've had good communication with our contractors, finding out what they are doing, if they are following all the guidelines from the CDC, what they're providing, all that. And I think for the most part, we've got a couple contractors that have started. They right out of the bat, they started paying show up bonuses for showing up every day. The AT&Ts and the Safeway grocery stores, they stepped up and did that. So, checking in with these contractors, checking in with these, with the members on what's going on in their workplace every day is important, and that's what we've been trying to deal with and make sure that if things aren't being up to standards, that we are putting the pressure on some of these companies to get it up to standard.
Yeah, I was just talking with the gentleman from ATU a minute ago, and I said, and I believe this. I'm hoping this moment we start, looking down the road at some huge organizing wins as people are being forced back into the workplace, and either treated well by their employer or not. Some of the horror stories I'm hearing, I don't have great faith, but I'm hoping out of this springs this moment where, by hearing that, there's a representative like you guys and like our friends at ATU out there fighting for their members and protecting them, making sure that they get the protective gear that they need, fighting to get them hazard pay, fighting to keep them safe. That will spring in someone's mind that, hey, I'd like to have the same rights. I'd like to have the same ability.
Yeah, you're going to get a whole mixture. I hope that does do that. I think you get some people that are wanting the, sad to say, the most money they can get, obviously, per hour, to where they can make a living. And then, the priorities are different for everybody. But I think that for the most part, the representation we've been given to our members here in the state of Alaska has been very good.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm looking at this as one of those, it's life or death. And it doesn't get, the decision making doesn't get much simpler or basic than whether you live or die.
Yes, correct. Pretty basic.
So last line of questioning I've got for you, because in looking at states that are reopening, and I'm looking at the southern states, and I'm a little worried that maybe we're kicking the door open a little too soon. I know there's pressure on our governor here in Pennsylvania to open the doors too soon. How are things progressing in your state?
We're progressing like a lot of the states are. There's the opening up 0.25% or a quarter of the restaurants. I think they just went up to now 50% can be in capacity in the restaurant at one time. They've opened up the bars to a smaller percentage, I believe. The hair salons and nail salons have opened up under certain guidelines. So it's kind of, I think it's in general what you see with other states. But what I see is that people want to get out and totally understand that, but they are being very cautious. You're seeing more masks around being worn. People, I think, are actually looking to take care of themselves, and so they are being a little bit more aware. Rick, when this thing hit, nobody knew what this thing was, and you didn't know whether you had to wear a mask or gloves or how long it stayed on something. So that's why I sit there and look at these members that were out there every day, of our members here at the local 959, that were out there delivering all this stuff and taking care of people and stocking the stores when everything was going frantic, and going to work not knowing where this monster was.
Yeah. Are you worried as I am that especially our healthcare workers, that at the end of this, the stress, the pressure that these folks are under becomes too much, and we end up once this kind of breaks, that people may break, and we end up with a bunch of especially healthcare workers suffering from things like PTSD.
Yeah, I worry about the stress that comes down on some of these people working in there, and I look at future hospital workers. Are they sitting there watching this on TV? All these different people, what they're going through, and are they actually going, wow, I don't know if I want to do this now, when we really need more hospital workers all over the country, and so that in a way is a little bit worrisome, that the stress that's being shown on TV may play into people's decisions to go into that field. I hope not.
Yeah, and what's most sickening to me throughout this whole process is that while we've got your members and the essential workers, our frontline heroes, going to work every day, busting their behind every day to make sure the economy's still kind of up and moving, and that we get the supplies that we need for the rest of us to be able to shelter in place. You've got the CARES Act gave an enormous tax break to the 1% of this country, $135 billion tax break, which means every one of our 443,000 millionaires got an average tax break of $1.6 million this year, and yet we can't ensure that every worker gets at least $15 an hour. It's disgraceful.
It is. This I think this whole pandemic has taught us a lot. I think even the poor people that got laid off and trying to get unemployment and going through the system and having the computers crash, having the phones never being answered, not getting checks like they were told they were going to get checks in the timely manner.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But Gary, good on you, good on your members. Congratulate them for the job well done, and stay safe, and keep up the great work.
Rick, it was great to talk to you again. I appreciate all the work that you do.
I appreciate you too as well. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon, Gary. Thanks so much, Gary Dixon, Secretary Treasurer, Teamsters Local 959 out there in Anchorage, Alaska. Real good guy. And look, good on him and good on his members. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. It was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman on the south side of Chicago. George Pullman made his fortune making luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. His cars revolutionized the rail industry, making long-distance travel a much more pleasant experience. Pullman founded a model town for his employees. In 1893, an economic crash devastated the U.S. economy. Pullman egregiously lowered the pay of his workers by as much as a third. But he did not lower rents in the company town, and did not decrease the dividends he paid to his stockholders. Outraged, the Pullman employees called for a strike. The strike was led by the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. When the union held its convention in Chicago that June, the delegates voted to boycott any train that included a Pullman car. More than 250,000 railroad workers in 27 states and U.S. territories supported the boycott. Angry businessmen demanded that something be done. President Grover Cleveland promised intervention if any train carrying U.S. mail was halted by the boycott. Railroad owners quickly attached mail cars to as many trains as they could. President Cleveland declared, "If it takes every dollar in the U.S. Treasury and every soldier in the United States Army to deliver a postcard in Chicago, that postcard shall be delivered." Federal troops brutally crushed the strike. 30 people died and more were injured. A federal injunction was filed against Eugene Debs, and he went to jail for 6 months for refusing to stop his support of the boycott. The Pullman strike marked a new level of federal intervention against the cause of labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a comment on Twitter from at Grace Sharon. She writes, Teamsters saved my family from birth until death of my loving, wonderful parents. Without this union, my family would have suffered financial hardships. And the reality is that story is told multiple times over. The sad reality is we don't tell each other that enough. And thank you, Ed Grace Sharon. I appreciate that. Because look, the mindset that because of my union card, because of the union job that I got as a young man, and the work that I was able to do and the compensation that I was able to get because of the hard work I did, I was able to move out of poverty, and I was able to provide for myself and for my family. And I'm going to tell everybody that. And I want that opportunity for everyone who's willing to go that route. I truly believe that every person who punches a clock needs a union. It's that simple. And these are those moments when it's most apparent, when it literally is a life or death situation, or it literally is, by having a say or not having a say, you are in a life and death situation. And as I've said on this show a number of times, I've been very fortunate in that I've never really put myself in a dangerous situation because of my employer. I've always been able to step up and say, no, I'm not taking that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it that way. I will do whatever needs to be done, but I will do it in a safe manner. And the sad reality is, I talk to people all the time who don't have that power, who don't have that ability. And especially right now, where you're looking at some of these meatpacking plants where, and I use that as an example because there is an example of how to do it right. There is an example out there of how you social distance, of how you make sure that you make workstations further apart and you make lunch facilities available, and you have, staggered punch in and punch out times. And, there's a way to do this, but it's going to take some logistics. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some thinking. It's going to take some working together. And it's going to take a little bit of extra money. You're going to have to pay people a little bit more. But it can be done safely. Everything can. It's just a matter of having the power and the voice to be able to stand up and demand it. And again, I come back to using the demand word because nothing's given. I'm sorry, there are no benevolent employers. It's what you demand. But again, thank you, Grace Sharon. Appreciate it. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Monty Bennett was just another faceless right-wing millionaire on the long list of high-dollar donors to Donald Trump, until he suddenly surfaced in April as the nation's biggest bagger of government cash in the Emergency Paycheck Protection Program. Bennett got $76 million from this fund, meant to help small businesses keep people employed in today's pandemic shutdown of the economy. But wait, there's nothing mom and popish about Monty's business. Operating through a maze of tightly interwoven financial trusts and corporate subsidiaries, he runs a sprawling Dallas-based conglomerate named Ashford, Inc. that owns and operates 130 hotels and luxury resorts all across the country, including the Marriott Beverly Hills and the Ritz-Carlton in the Virgin Islands. How does a multi-billion-dollar empire get such payments while legitimate small businesses are shut out? The old-fashioned way, by paying lobbyists and lawmakers to rig the rules to let corporate thieves raid the Treasury. A major donor to Trump and GOP Congress critters, Bennett pressured them to punch a special interest loophole in the program, decreeing that while a big business cannot apply for payments, each unit of a big business can. So, gotcha! Ashford Inc.'s squad of manipulators were running all-night sessions for each of the hotels it owns, getting them to rush out, quote, individual applications. This made the slick hotelier king of Bailout Hill, having scooped up 339 times more than the average applicant received. Bennett also balked at the requirement that the bulk of taxpayer dollars be used to maintain the paychecks of Ashford's hotel employees. Instead, he insisted the government aid should be available to him. This is Chum Hightower saying, did you know that boss, spelled backwards, is double S-O-B?
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday, I took a very nice, relaxing day. It was my birthday and Mother's Day. Yes, it was both. So we celebrated both the Corona birthday and obviously the Corona Mother's Day. And so I was kind of, off. I was not paying attention to Donald Trump. I swore the day off. Yet today I wake up and I find that there was basically the Mother's Day meltdown Trump had, and Obamagate has now popped up, and I'm going, am I missing something? What is this obsession with a guy who is not in power, who is not running for anything, and yet there it was on Mother's Day, along with a plethora of bizarre retweets and just idiocy. And here to share some thoughts on, the Mother's Day meltdown and, why this obsession with a guy who's not in power anymore, our good friend Propane Jane. Jane, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me back.
So, did you have a good Mother's Day?
I had an awesome Mother's Day. Thanks for asking.
Good for you.
Happy Mother's Day to Carol and all the mothers in your life as well.
She says thank you as well. We had a wonderful day. My youngest daughter made us a cake.
Awesome.
We split half and half, and it was a wonderful day. But here again, I paid no attention to any of this. Today I see the Mother's Day meltdown. What is this Obamagate thing? Because I don't think he even knows, because he can't explain it.
It's jealousy and envy, and he's a narcissist, so he can't actually say that out loud, right? I mean, he has to just feel that all internally, and we have to get the manifestation of that, which is just this obsession and compulsion. It's pretty sad. I mean, I think the depths of it are so deep, because this is such a terrible moment, and he's being criticized so broadly and so relentlessly because it's terrible, right? I mean, it just continues to be terrible every single day, every single week, and now every single month, right? Because we're at this for now over 2 months, and in many cases, like 3. If you were really paying attention and you started this when you started to hear the warnings coming across the news. So ultimately, the fact that he continues to be incompetent, he continues to be sick and dangerous, he continues to be a jerk about all of it simultaneously. So that makes it even worse. And so people are just angry about it. And so what comes with that is also this nostalgia for, hey, when was the last time we had somebody that actually did this well? And lo and behold, there's Barack Obama, right, who was calm, steady. He was often criticized for it, actually, right? I mean, that's the joke now, right? That it was so funny that the only scandal was the tan suit and the Dijon mustard.
And the curtains. Don't forget the curtains.
Oh, yeah, and the curtains. Oh, and the shirt sleeves in the Oval Office. That was also a problem.
Yeah.
All of that silly season stuff that we got to just waste time on because ultimately he was getting the damn job done. And so Trump is not doing that, and so he's hearing people make those comparisons. And for a narcissist, this is a gigantic, I mean, this is a colossal, this is the biggest possible narcissistic injury you can have, because you are literally supposed to be the leader of the quote-unquote free world. I mean, you're supposed to be the most super powerful person who leads a superpower. And why the hell do you even sign up to do this and do all of the dastardly criminal things that he did behind the scenes to get where he is today? Why do you even do that if not for adoration, adulation, respect, honor, love, you know, all of these to fill this void that this man has?
Yeah, his drug.
You know, where it's his drug, right? And he needs that constant supply. And so, again, he can't have his rallies, right? Now he's being told, you know, look, there's people in the White House that have this thing now, and you're not social distancing, you're not wearing a mask, you're not doing anything that any of these guidelines say you should be doing, and you're an idiot. I mean, this is what everyone's telling him, basically.
Are they really? Are they telling him this? Or is he, because I think he's surrounded himself with Fox News and Yes people. Does anyone really?
Well, it's not the people who are around him, it's the outside world.
Okay.
It's the fact that instead of him being able to do what he has always done, which is remain in this like little small fish tank of the Fox News propaganda sphere, okay, where he can go on there, he can call them on Fox and Friends in the morning, and he can say whatever, you know what, crazy stuff that he says on there, and they bleep him out or cut him off real quick, or they sugarcoat it, or they hurry him on to something else to make him look, you know, presentable. And that's how he gets by with the Fox people, because they're going to do whatever he wants them to do regardless, even if they have these little spats now. That's what he normally does. And then he has his rallies, and then he has the little Yes people in the media that follow around and give these little softball stenographer pieces so they can keep access. They are Yes people, like you said. They don't confront him. But the problem is now that he can't do any of that small fish tank. He has to actually get out, you know, into the ocean. And he has to do these one-on-one in the press room where day after day after day, and he wanted this. This is what he signed up for.
Yeah.
Instead of doing work, he wanted to put his face out there, his orange face out there with no mask.
Yeah.
So he's out there, and people are asking him questions that he doesn't know the answer to. He keeps saying stupid stuff like, you should drink bleach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Please don't do that. But that's what he's saying, unfortunately. And so, again, he's having to go back and say, oh, I was just being sarcastic. Well, no, you weren't. You're just an idiot, you know. And so this is the constant conversation. And then today, I mean, I didn't watch it, but I know that he stormed out because the women reporters were giving him the blues, right? They're fired up. It's after Mother's Day. They're seeing all these people dying. Their empathy, their TLC is kicking in, and they're going, hey, what are you doing? What's up with the test? Are you going to stop people from dying? Are you going to even try? And he just stormed out.
No, we're done. We've done. We're the greatest. We've done the most tests. We've got the best tests. They're tremendous. We're number one. We're testing more than anyone.
Well, that's not reality. And
are you sure? Are you sure? You know, Austria, you know, testing more than we are, and Singapore testing more than we are. Are we sure we're not secretly better than they are?
No, it really is just really terrible, and it's embarrassing, and we're a hot mess. And it's sad because, yes, like you're saying, there's a blueprint for what we should be doing. It's not like it's some mystery and this hasn't been figured out. I mean, this is nuts and bolts public health science, you know, and he has actual people on his staff that are going out there with him and knowing exactly what needs to be done and guiding the process from a guideline standpoint, which is what all of the hospitals and doctors and nurses are following, right? Because they're following CDC guidelines and Health and Human Services guidelines. So they're getting the facts there, but they just won't connect the message because they have a sociopath there.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't because, you know, here's a guy who, you know, now I guess everybody in the White House has to wear a mask except him. And you go, what kind of message is that? What kind of leadership is that? And, you know, you mentioned the bleach thing, you know, and for all my Tea Party friends, evidently, yes, if you do shove light up your backside, it will help. Trust me. Because Donald said so. Try that. Let me know how it works out for you. But but it's that messaging that right from the top, and there was a part of me, a very very small part of it, that had hoped this morning that maybe with it getting so close to him, that maybe it had said, no, maybe we need to maybe calm it down because it is here. I might get it. Maybe just, hey, maybe carry the mask. Maybe not wear it, but at least carry it to send the message to all these nitwits who are shooting people and beating up little girls at ice cream shops and, all this stuff because they don't want to wear a mask. Maybe just by holding it, he sends the message that it's okay and these freaking nitwits will stop.
No. No, because ultimately, this is a man who is, quote unquote, a stable genius and also invincible, but at the same time, evaded the draft like a handful of times because of bone spurs. But then wants to say to, John McCain, I like war heroes that didn't get captured. I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is the fallacy and the dichotomy and the cognitive dissonance that exists in his mind, where he can at the same time be the strongest man there ever was, but also this really big wimp and coward. And ultimately he has this, perversion of masculinity that, again, he's not the only one that has it. And again, this is this theme that we keep coming back to, is that there is a rugged individualism, there is a stubbornness and obstinance and a defiance about, I can go it my own way. I know better. I have some other plan. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to value your opinion. I don't have to value any of these facts because I just know better. And how do I know better? Because I'm miraculously the anointed one, because I'm this rich white guy.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I understand that rugged individual thing. You do your own thing. I get that. But there's a moment where you go, you know what? There's being a little defiant. There's being the rebel without a cause. There's that, and then there's just being freaking stupid. And this is where it all breaks down for me. I'm sorry. We're at a weird moment in our history where I don't think you need a rocket launcher to order a sandwich from Subway. I'm sorry. I just don't see you needing a giant machine gun, 5 feet tall, to walk down the street and take a selfie. What kind of mental midget are you that you need this display? And can we just call them terrorists? My wife sent me a thing. What was it? Vanilla ISIS?
Vanilla ISIS, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. There they are.
My other favorite is Y'all Qaeda.
Yeah, there's that.
And American Taliban.
There you go. Well,
yeah. I totally agree with you, and I think that those people are problematic for a number of reasons, of course. But again, they are performative. I mean, they are meant to be like a carnival barker sideshow, like, hey, shiny thing, let's look at these people doing this really absurd thing and scary thing and terroristic thing. They're meant to be props, and they're being brought in on purpose by agitators and astroturfers who are doing that on purpose.
Right.
So that's one. So that's one piece of it. But I think the larger piece is, I just made a Target run today, and what I've been talking about over the last couple of days. Yesterday I saw this footage. I don't know if you've seen it, of all these people in this coffee shop in Colorado for Mother's Day.
Yeah. I've seen a bunch of those videos.
Just piling into there.
And the part of that video that caught my attention is not that there were a bunch of people who weren't paying attention, but there was one woman who not only was not paying attention, she was mocking the whole thing. I mean, there's one thing about being just completely freaking oblivious and stupid, but there's another level of this to where you're doing it on purpose.
Exactly, right. And there's multiple levels, right? I mean, there's multiple people doing it at multiple levels, but I think what is most disheartening to me, and I think is the most dangerous aspect, and the aspect that is what results in the sheer volume and magnitude of the death toll itself, why it's, thousands upon thousands upon thousands every single day, is because human behavior is such, right, and the fact that we don't have herd immunity in our population, that we are relying on humans to change. We're relying on humans to adapt, to synthesize information, and to be smart about the information they're hearing, to not dismiss it as a hoax, to not dismiss it as a liberal media, deep state, whatever other names they call, they call this whole George Soros thing, that they won't believe anything we say. You have to be able to step out of that and go, wait a minute, I know people who are actually dying from this. I mean, I've seen it's in our communities. I've seen the numbers. I do see things shutting down. I do see my governor doing whatever the heck he's doing, depending on what state you're in. And to actually synthesize that information and make better choices in terms of wearing PPE, sanitizing themselves, limiting their exposure, not going out to these big, huge, super spreading events, just not being an idiot, like you said. But the problem is, again, that because we have a media that is so effective and efficient at swaying public opinion in whatever direction it wants it to go, even subliminally in many instances. We've now been subjected to months and months and months of the media telling us essentially all of these racial health disparities, showing us all of these Chinese people and Trump and all of the Republicans calling it the Chinese virus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have all the data from America where, okay, lo and behold, like we talked about, a month ago, however long ago it was, lo and behold, when you get public health data, that data is going to skew towards people of color, particularly black people, in places that have sizable black populations. But again, they're not putting a disclaimer that says that does not in any way mean that you as a white person or any other kind of person that isn't black have no chance of getting this thing. That's not what that means. But ultimately, when I go around, when I made my Target run today, and as I've gone out to make my errands, of course I'm in full head to toe hazmat gear. Okay, I got my mask, I got my gloves, I got what I need depending on where I'm going and how close I'm going to be to people and what I'm going to be touching while I'm there. And I go in there, and every black woman, every black family, and there's a lot of black people where I live. Every Indian person I see, every Asian person I see, every Latina person I see is doing the same thing I'm doing. They're fully in their hazmat gear. And then I look at the white people, and I can literally tell you the percentages, because now I'm counting. It's like maybe 40% of white people are maybe doing some sort of PPE. What is that? What is that? Why are we the ones looking like why are we doing this and they're not doing that? Is it because they're watching Fox News that's telling them this is all a hoax and these people are ridiculous? Nobody needs to have on a mask because that's what Trump is saying? Are they putting themselves at more risk in going out to these coffee shops in Colorado and rural, America that is so segregated that is 90% white? Are they going out just free and easy at all of these events now, super spreading? And then we're going to see in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, these numbers out in these communities that thought they couldn't be touched by this suddenly touched by it in a major way.
Yeah. And the thing is, and this is where, again, I go back to and I know you're going to disagree with me, and that's okay. But there's part of me that goes, you know what? You went and did something stupid. You got sick. Shame on you. No help for you. You're on your own.
Well, that would be great if they just didn't come to the hospital.
Right. But here's the thing. And here's what we learned coming out of South Korea. Just the other day, they said they opened up the bars, and one person who went to one of these, evidently they do contact tracing as well as anybody. One person who went to a nightclub is responsible for infecting at least 54 people.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
And you go, it just takes one. That's it.
It just takes one because, again, you don't have to physically touch anyone. You just have to walk in as a vector that's bringing the germs in with you as you walk around. So if you remember Scooby-Doo and Pigpen?
Yeah.
Remember how Pigpen had that like cloud of dirt and dust that was
Sure.
always around him, and he just was like, you just knew he was stinky. You could smell him through just visualizing him, right?
We all knew a Pigpen, sure.
We all knew a Pigpen, and we understood that imagery because we just know that you can emanate funk and all kind of stuff off of yourself. Well, that's how you emanate coronavirus. That's how these germs just hop off of you onto a bar or onto some food at the grocery store or, you know, wherever, on the bathroom door handle or whatever. Everywhere you go, everything you touch. And so, yes, it seems hyperbolic and like we're exaggerating, but again, this is also why, you know, people who are heeding the information and are listening to experts are sort of becoming germaphobes. That's how they're adapting. They're wearing the stuff, even though they're not sick. You know, having the mask isn't a sign of I'm already sick. For a lot of people, it's a sign of I'm trying not to get sick. Please don't make me sick.
No, what I've been saying is if you're not wearing a mask, what you're basically telling people is, I don't care about you at all.
Exactly. It's like having on a red hat.
Exactly. So wear the red hat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a substitute for the red hat right now. If you're not wearing the red hat, you are that offensive to some of us, particularly the people of color who are walking around and going, are you trying to kill me?
So isn't this where societal norms should, you know, if in basic sociological terms, isn't this where, you know, the rest of us should be bringing these people along? But the sad thing is these folks have this defiance disorder.
Right.
And you're the psychiatrist, and you know, and there's part of me that understands this. I get it. I get, you know, wanting to be the rebel. But there's a moment where you go, I could die from this. This could kill Granny. I might think I'm Superman, but if I give it to, you know, somebody else, I don't want that on my conscience. But then again,
Right.
I think these are people who don't have a conscience.
Right. Well, a lot of them don't, but a lot of them are also so selfish and so self-centered.
We're Americans.
And Americans, right, that they won't actually develop that insight or that empathy or that ability to be mindful and walk a mile in somebody else's shoes until they are personally impacted by this, until it no longer becomes the small fish tank and they actually join us in the ocean like Trump is doing in that press room. You know, when they actually hear that, oh, so-and-so, you know, let's just say Karen, since that's a popular name now, right? Let's say that it's Karen.
You picking on the Karens again? My kids pick on the Karens.
I know. Well, hey, she's a thing. She's a whole phenomenon.
Yes,
and so say it's Karen. Karen went out and she went and got her nails done because she's been itching and dying to do it. And why the hell not?
Got her roots done too. Don't forget the roots.
She's got to have her roots done because they look a hot mess after all this time. And let's just say her governor, Greg Abbott, you know, has heard her pain and her cries and her calls and these big stunts that Ted Cruz, you know, they saw Ted Cruz go out and get his terrible haircut that really he could have just saved because it wasn't cute. And they see all of that and they go, okay, I'm going to go do that. And then they find out that, Karen is now in the hospital on the ICU, you know, on the ICU unit on a ventilator. And then what?
Yeah. So is it wrong that I would want to go in there and throw it in her face?
Well, you know what? You don't even have to because that experience is so terrifying and so terrible, and she's literally on the edge of death if she's in at that point anyway, that, you know what, the work is already being done. It's like my aunt said. She said, you know, she hoped that Trump got it but then still lived, but that he would get, you know, have to go and be in the ICU, and while he couldn't breathe, he got visited by a Scrooge-like ghost, like the movie Scrooge.
So that's the next movie then. Trump gets the corona. All right, I can see that.
But ultimately, the point being that when you were in that moment and when you're facing down death, you know, like Lee Atwater on his deathbed when he finally came clean about the Southern strategy. The man was dying from cancer, and he finally said, you know what, by the way, we were doing this whole thing. And in this situation, a lot of those people, and there's a great article, and I'll link it to you, in the New York Times, and they profile, and it was back from March, I think, they profiled a woman in Louisiana who was in that very same situation. Her Facebook circle, everybody was a MAGA-tee, and they kept saying, this is a hoax, blah, 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 blah. And then her husband ended up on a ventilator. And, and thankfully he's alive and he survived, and it's kind of one of those feel-good stories. But, again, she had to basically be the Cassandra for her whole entire social network because they were really thinking it was a hoax. And she had to say, oh, actually, no, it's really real, and my husband's on a ventilator. So let's act like, this is serious now.
That's crazy. Just crazy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, because I got one other question other than this.
Yeah.
Is there any hope? I mean, because, I'm looking at this and look, there are knuckleheads everywhere.
Yeah.
There are Americans,
right. Right.
It's, however you want to put it, self-centered,
right.
Ridiculous, egomaniacal,
right.
Whatever
right.
word you want to throw out. Is there hope for us? Because I don't think there is. I think once the states say, we're going to open back up, I think people are just going to go back to doing what they're doing. And it's just we're going to be no better off than we were a month ago.
No. I think there's hope. I think there's hope, and I'll tell you, I'm in the best mood today, and it's not just because of Mother's Day yesterday, but it's because of my Target run.
Okay.
It's because I saw the percentages of people that I did see wearing their hazmat suits and their PPE. Yes, not everybody's going to get it, and again, that's why herd immunity works the way it does. You really only take, if you can
80%.
Yeah, exactly. If you can get 80% of people with good sense, that 20% that refuses to have it ultimately doesn't really matter, and we still can go back to our life as usual.
Yeah, you're still talking about 80%.
Well, that's what we've accomplished. That's what the beauty and the story and the hope of public health is, and that's why in these moments we don't back down. We don't get intimidated by Jim Joe Bob at Subway with his inert, inactive weapon or whatever the hell that was. It could have just been, a toy from something, for all we know. We listen to the facts. We don't get scared by those people. We put the facts out because ultimately when enough people hear the facts and they're presented in a calm manner with receipts, and you see the numbers and you see the death toll and you hear the stories and you understand that people around you are dying from this and getting very sick from this, enough people will act how they need to act for as long as we need to do it until we get something that is a vaccine that can help us approximate that type of herd immunity that we're talking about.
Right. And you're talking at least a year before the vaccine.
Exactly.
They're saying possibly 2 before you get enough of it.
Exactly.
To get it around.
Exactly. And that's why all of those facts have come out. That's why they don't sell false hope. That's why they don't give you these little shiny numbers and tell you we're going to be over and done in 2-3 months like a Trump wants to do because they just want to feed all the, positive things you want to hear. No, they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you that real, okay, that some of this is not going to be what we want to hear. We are going to have to make changes, and we are going to have to be different long enough to make ourselves safe enough and give the scientists time to do their work and stop encumbering their work.
That's the thing.
Give them the funding.
Stop screwing it up.
Stop screwing it up.
And stop throwing hydroxychloroquine into the mix and saying that's a magic cure.
Exactly. Stop doing that. And again, we will be abrasive. We will say things that may scare people and shock people. One of the greatest campaigns that I've seen recently is the campaign that they've done in Appalachia about, yes, we're on meth. You're on meth. Just say it plain because, yes, you are the hell on meth, and it's killing you. And we can't act like we don't have this problem in our community because it's killing us. And so let's talk about the fact that you're on meth.
Yeah, this is you on drugs.
Exactly, and that's how you get people in for treatment. That's how people are going to hit rock bottom. I mean, that's my business. When people hit rock bottom, that's when they come and see me. That's when we have a chance to actually help them. So I don't mind that people are going to hit rock bottom and things are going to get scary because ultimately that's what has to happen for us to actually wake up and get the solutions and get the safety net in place so that we don't have to end up here again.
There you go. So you're telling me there's hope. If you say there's hope, I'm going to go with that.
Get people to stay home, to do the social distancing. We know it worked. We know it can continue to work. We see it working all over the world. If we want to be free like other people are being free, we need to actually make the sacrifices first. We haven't made enough sacrifices first.
There you go. Jane, always fun talking with you. I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
You too. Have a great week and be safe.
You as well. Thanks so much, our good friend Propane Jane. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Even if we completely stop emitting greenhouse gases today, we will continue to feel the effects of a warmer world.
Man-made global warming will render some regions unlivable within 50 years, new study warns. Siberian forest burning at rates not seen in 10,000 years.
Who saw it 10,000 years ago?
Plus,
it looks like something out of a horror film with a name to match.
Murder hornets. Yes, murder hornets. Giant invasive bee-killing hornets confirmed in the United States.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
These hornets grow up to 2 inches long, roughly 5 times the size of a bee.
The mandibles, they're very, very sharp. I mean, that's what they use to decapitate bees, and then they'll mash up the thorax into a meatball, they call it, and fly it back to feed to their larvae.
What the actual
couldn't have said it better myself. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I think at this point Mother Nature is just trying to tell us to get the hell out of here or something. I mean, this is insane. Murder hornets, really?
Yes, a global pandemic, a plague of locusts. If you didn't have murder hornets on your apocalypse bingo card, you can be excused.
I guess.
It's a giant invasive species of hornet from Asia, nicknamed murder hornets. It has somehow arrived in the United States.
Great.
With 4 confirmed sightings in Washington state.
These hornets grow up to 2 inches long, roughly 5 times the size of a bee. And in Japan, where they originate, they reportedly kill up to 50 people each year. They're giant stingers capable of piercing a beekeeper's suit.
While its sting is dangerous for beekeepers, it is a much bigger threat to honeybees that are crucial to the U.S. food supply. Just a few hornets can slaughter an entire honeybee hive in just hours. Populations of U.S. honeybees have already declined by more than 40% over recent years due to colony collapse disorder, which is linked to pesticides. Bee experts say it is imperative to eradicate this invasive hornet before it spreads to the rest of the continent because honeybees pollinate more than 90 vital food crops.
I swear to God, if the murder hornets are responsible for my tomatoes not fruiting so far this year, I'm going to murder those hornets.
Okay. Some big climate news. The European Union's climate monitoring service Copernicus announced that April 2020 is tied with 2016 for the hottest April ever recorded globally since record-keeping began in the 1880s. NASA and NOAA are likely to announce similar conclusions in coming weeks. The new record hot April means 2020 is almost guaranteed to be one of the top 2 hottest years ever recorded.
Yeah, whatever. We've got murder hornets now.
That heat, however, has consequences in Siberia. The boreal forest is already burning at a rate not seen in 10,000 years, with more than 5 million acres ablaze, and it's not even summer yet. The fires are releasing even more climate-warming CO2, in turn triggering more heat and triggering more fires. In the Amazon rainforest, experts warned this week that because of drought and a 50% increase in logging over last year, the Amazon is on course for a severe fire season. And carbon dioxide levels measured at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii hit 418 parts per million in the atmosphere this month. That's the highest level in at least 3 million years.
I'm sorry. I'm still on the murder hornets. Continue.
A disturbing new study warns that because of man-made global warming, many densely populated parts of the world could be too hot for humans within the next 50 years. The researchers warn that unless governments act to transition away from fossil fuels, the world's habitable climate zone, in which humanity has thrived for 6,000 years, will shift so much by 2070 that 3 billion people will either have to move to cooler regions or adapt to extreme heat conditions. That shift will also bring water shortages, crop failures, and extreme heat waves that could trigger mass migrations. The biggest projected population growth is expected to be in regions that will see the greatest increase in dangerous heat.
Uncle.
Finally, some good news. Big Oil's Net Zero Club is getting bigger, at least in Europe. On Tuesday, the French multinational oil and gas giant Total said it is joining European oil companies Shell and BP in setting an ambitious target to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Now, critics note that all of these European oil majors' plans are vague, but the targets do signal a big shift in strategy for billions of dollars in capital investments and would have been unheard of just a few years ago.
What kind of world is it when we have to turn to the oil companies for our good news? For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to, believe it or not, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com if you dare. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like there might be a baseball season after all. Who knows? Maybe 4th of July, I guess. They're talking about an 82-game season. Maybe. We'll see. Got to salvage something for baseball. I don't know. Will I go to a game this year? No. I'm not going to. We usually make a game every year, usually 3 or 4. I think I'm staying away from crowds for the rest of the year. Just kind of writing it off, I think, for a while. We will see how it goes, though. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the day's events. Evidently, we've prevailed, according to Trump, on the testing. Our good friend Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So we prevailed. I mean, I guess we've made the moment.
Prevailed like when they said we won the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
Iraq. Right, mission accomplished. I don't know what statistics they were using, but of course testing is, not out there obviously at all what it should be, and everybody's talking about how long it'll take to actually get the tests and try to see what they can do with those stats. So we know it's in its infancy.
So what did you think of him marching out today?
What's that?
Trump had a little tirade, marched out of the press briefing today. Stomped out like he was very unhappy.
I did not see that. Where was that at?
Oh, well, the woman asked him a question about why this has to be a competition, why the testing has to be a global competition, why it matters. And he said to the Chinese American reporter, "Ask China." She kind of pushed him. A CNN reporter chimed in, started asking him the question, and he just turned tail and ran.
I did not know that. That I did not see. I haven't. I have to look at the video. Was that a couple of hours ago?
No, it was the end of the 4:00 press conference.
Okay. I missed that one.
Yeah, he didn't have the mask. There was a real small part of me that thought he would maybe come out with the mask in his hand, something to show, hey, I'm taking this seriously because hey, someone close to me's got it. It's possible that it's in the White House. Maybe we do something. No, he didn't do it. He doubled down.
Yeah, I didn't think he would on him. I mean, I didn't see that clip, unfortunately. That's one of the few news stories I've never seen in the last couple of years. But on that one, it didn't surprise me because, they were in the conference room. I'm sure you saw that with some of the military people. Nobody had masks.
Right.
They had spacing, but no masks. So I don't really anticipate unless he's, I don't know, maybe like parents didn't wear the mask in the hospital, but then wore the mask after that. Maybe depends on the circumstance, but no, I wouldn't expect for any of the press conferences that he'll have a mask.
No, I wouldn't have thought so either. I mean, but maybe just to walk out, because a leader is going to say, hey, look, I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's not the best option, but hey, you got to send the signal to your people that we need to do this, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to this, but there's all kinds of insanity going on around businesses opening up and nobody following the rules. I'm sure you saw the story in Flint, Michigan, where the security guard was shot in the back of the head because he wanted the little girl to wear a mask before the family could come into the store.
Oh, I know. I saw that in her. I saw that where I think the son and her husband came, and then the son shot him.
Right.
I actually saw that. Now we've had some complaints the other way. It's kind of interesting. Some people now are refusing to go into certain businesses if the businesses require a mask. Now, inside the businesses, for example, in Ohio, you have to have a mask, but you don't have to have a mask if you go in. Only if you work there. So people are debating that too, and thinking some of it should be obviously required. Some people don't think so. I know there was a restaurant in one of the states that just had open seating, with no spacing. So I think we're going to see a lot of everything, Rick.
No, and this is where this is by not having a true leader taking this moment seriously. We're going to end up having to fight this stuff out at every ice cream shop, because I'm sure you saw the story in Massachusetts. The person opened the ice cream shop and said, screw it. I'm not going to have you yelling at my teenagers because you don't want to wear a mask.
Right.
I mean, it's insane. I mean, think about this for a second. You're going to literally yell things to a 17-year-old girl that you certainly would never say to your own kids, and you think that's somehow okay because you just don't want to put a piece of cloth over your face for 13 seconds?
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of people are, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people are doing and saying things, and I mean, I've just about seen it all in all the news reports, and personally witnessed some things with people screaming at other people in stores, and just kind of bizarre.
I mean, you've been around a while. You've seen this stuff a bit. Could you ever have imagined in your lifetime we would be this kind of idiotic society, or have we always been this?
No, we haven't always been. I mean, I've noticed because I was in office 24 years. I call it a bell curve. Towards the, it wasn't that bad as it is now, but towards the end of my time in office, we would get people that would call, and some people would curse out the front desk girl. Now, I always actually got their numbers and actually called them back. And I would say, I'm going to hang up on you. I don't care if you vote for me or not. Now, if you want to talk to me civil, fine. Don't you cuss out our front desk people. People would do that. Now, again, most people were decent. But I think these days, from what I know from office holders I talk to, things are, even before this, have just started to get irate. And I think now with this, you're going to see all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like we're just in this weird moment where
we are.
Common sense and decency and civility all and actually being considerate of others out the window. I mean, because the mask thing. Look, I don't like wearing a mask any more than anybody else doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the damn thing. But the reality is, if I'm in a place with other people, I'm going to put it on as a bit of respect for everyone else, because I know that it's not protecting me. It's helping to protect everybody else. So it's just kind of the courteous thing to do. Mm-hmm. Or am I missing something?
No, I mean, I think that, obviously it's a measure of precaution. How long we do it, I don't know. I mean, does it go on 2 years? I doubt it. Right now is a time of uncertainty, so I think that's why more people are asked to obviously to do it. But again, we had a mandate in Ohio to do it, and then all of a sudden that vanished within hours, because a lot of people became irate about it. I mean, I think there's bigger fish to fry than just the mask. How we're going to have the school systems go back, what works, what doesn't work, the job situation, safety in the workplace, But people are going to argue over a lot of things. And I've also heard some absurdities. I went to get a refill at a place, and they said, you can't have any refills due to state law because of the virus. That wasn't true. It was pop.
Yeah.
So, you hear everything. And I want to say, okay, which state law was that? I missed it that day.
But you're hearing a lot of things. Like I heard someone today said that one of the state legislators, and I think it's actually true, one of the state or one of the Congress women, it's one of the squad people, said, we should make like a $2 trillion coin. And now I hear that Nancy Pelosi is drafting a $750 billion bill that's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. Can we put that on the $2 trillion coin?
Maybe we can. It seems like we've been able to print things. Yes, Speaker is developing you're right, a $750 billion bill that would apply, as I first read it, it would apply to state and local governments. Now, how that distributes, I don't know, because obviously you've got some powerhouses of delegations like New York and California, so I imagine they'll have a state minimum.
Right.
I would imagine.
But in this, this is one of the things that I've been talking about for a while. One of my big concerns is out of this comes this liability shield, this liability protection that Trump and Mitch McConnell keep talking about in order to get this money to the states who desperately need it, that you're going to end up giving up workers' rights to safe working conditions. I fear that that's part of this.
Well, yes, what's happened here, and it's very interesting. I was watching some of the manufacturers associations, and I was watching early on how they were saying that people need to wear masks, you need to be careful, and they were taking every ounce of precaution in the factories they oversee and in the businesses that they oversee, et cetera. But now they are not so vocal publicly, but privately, like the Manufacturers Association, are up on Capitol Hill trying to get every ounce of liability protection they can get. And again, you just can't have complete, here's liability protection. You have no liability answers. You can't do that. A business would do that, then, it's all over with. There's balances there, and they've got to look at the current system of how liability works. I'm trying to imagine in my mind, what is the difference? Why would you need to have a liability shield when you have current situations that apply to safety? Whether it's this virus or anything else, you've got them. So why would we freeze them for this?
But because it's part of destroying the regulatory body that we have. It's part of tearing down what few barriers there are, and moving us right back to the days of the Lochner era that I've been talking about. I fear we're heading back to those horrible days where they use this idea of freedom or liberty to contract as a reason to not have safe working conditions or minimum wage laws or maximum hour laws again, and taking us right back to those horrible days.
Well, you make a great point too, and also anything that is made temporary usually stays permanent.
Right.
Whether it's a temporary tax increase or whether it's temporary liability, it usually is not a temporary deal. So if it gets in there, it's going to be hard to reverse it. And right now, the other point you made about some of the changes in the regulatory laws, there are all kinds of things going on, Rick, we don't even know about. Environmental freezes, some of the I think it was oil producing entities had some escapes where they were going to freeze some of the regulations. I think they've done some of it already, and I'm not sure the media is focusing on that at all.
No, I was reading the Heritage Foundation's plan this morning, and it was one of those things where I'm just going, wow. I go right for the jugular. They are, the idea of as we've been talking about, provide all of these these companies with the liability protection so that immunity was the word that they used from any prosecution during all of this. They want to deregulate everything they can get their hands on. They want to hand over to tech companies the ability to do any type of digital contact tracing. Basically anything you would never allow the government to do, we're going to allow private corporations to do. I mean, it's a whole lot of bad. It just really, really is. And as I tweeted out this morning, they never seem to let a good crisis go to waste. And I fear they're not going to let this one go. Last question I've got for you. Mike Pence said that he'd be happy to see Michael Flynn back in government. You think Trump brings him back?
No, I don't think he brings him back. I would be surprised if that happens. I think Flynn most likely will go into either a think tank or some type of tour or a book or something. I just really don't think that Trump will bring him back. The Pence comment surprised me because putting aside this current debate on Flynn and what the Justice Department did or didn't do, et cetera, the fact remains that Flynn misled the Vice President of the United States. That hasn't been denied. He misled him. And I'm shocked Pence would even, say anything that he would welcome him because he admits that he was misled.
Misled is a nice way to say lied.
Pence publicly said that.
Yeah, no, misled is a nice way of saying he lied to him.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he lied to him.
Just put that out there. But
Pence actually said misled, so that's why I repeated it.
Yeah,
that's correct.
It's just crazy.
He
Crazy
lied.
stuff. Anyway, Bob, as always, I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former congressman from Ohio, political analyst, and good friend of the program. Going to take a quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman, on the south side of Chicago, where workers made luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. As a depression swept the nation, workers had seen their wages slashed. But rents owed to the company owner George Pullman stayed the same. The strike won support from the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. The American Railway Union called for a boycott of all Pullman cars, and more than 250,000 railway workers participated in the work action against Pullman. The strike was crushed by legal injunctions and with federal troops. In a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, Eugene V. Debs was imprisoned for his support of the boycott. One prominent supporter of the strike was Chicago area Reverend William H. Cardawine. The Reverend supported the strikers from his pulpit. After the strike, his book, The Pullman Strike, helped spread the word of Pullman. In it, he warned, "We as a nation are dividing ourselves, like ancient Rome, into two classes, the rich and the poor, the oppressor and the oppressed. On the side of the oppressor, there is power and protection, class legislation, and military support. We are following in the tracks of ancient Rome," he wrote, "instead of learning lessons from her failures and defeats. No country can prosper, no government long perpetuate itself and its institutions, which does not administer judgment and justice alike to all its people." These words from Reverend Carwadine seem more relevant than ever today. Will we heed his warning? Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here's a horrible idea, and it came from Donald Trump, which makes it a double bad idea. Tell me what you think on this, and I want to hear people's thoughts on if it's a good idea to allow people who are struggling through this moment. Understand the $1,200 is now gone, unless you haven't gotten it yet, and then you're probably really still struggling. But that money's gone. The idea that $1,200 was going to last you 10 weeks, moronic, which is why, again, our Treasury Secretary said it. Trump's great idea here is to allow workers to take money from their Social Security as kind of an early exchange. We'll give you a little bit of it now, and you'll get less in your retirement. I personally think this is the dumbest idea you could possibly ever come up with, and one that you would never ask corporate America to get in the middle of. Now remember, Boeing said they would take no money from the federal government if it meant that they had to have an equity partner, that the government would get shares or some ability to claw back the money that they've lent. So they just want a handout. They want welfare. And the administration, and look, the Democrats gave it up as well, a $500 billion trough for the little piggies to put their snouts in. But for average, everyday working stiffs, folks like you and me, the idea that we're going to have to borrow from our Social Security, which is already pathetic to begin with, and needs to be adjusted to where you can actually live something of a reasonable existence in your golden years, to take that money out now and not have it for down the road is just plain idiotic. Because of course they're not saying you can take some of it out and you'll get the same benefit. No. And this really is about destroying Social Security. That's the end game always. The end game is if a bunch of people go, oh, hey, I need that $5,000 out of my Social Security now. They get the money out now, and it drains the fund a little bit now out of money that should not have been withdrawn. So it makes the pot less, and then it doesn't grow over time as much, which means a lesser benefit, and quicker to bankruptcy, quicker to being broke. If they could bankrupt it tomorrow, they would. But here we're about, I guess, what is it, about 15 years from Social Security not paying out everything that it owes. I think it's like 75% in 15 years is what it'll pay out. And then, forever at 75%. This, to me, is one of those moments where never let a good crisis go to waste. Social Security has been high on their list of things to destroy. So is Medicare and Medicaid, all what's left of our social safety net from the New Deal era. They want to wipe it away. They want desperation. They want people working those crummy jobs till the day they freaking die. And I'll tell you, you allow people to take money out, just like your 401k or your IRA or your retirement plan at all. You take it out early, it's not going to be there later. And settling short-term pain only makes long-term that much worse. And that's what this is. They have no problem giving trillions of dollars to corporate America. Every time there's a bailout, it's here. By all means, take it. Here, take this too. Don't forget this. But yet, when we working people get into trouble, it's, what pound of flesh can we take? How much can we get in return? This is a horrible, horrible idea. This is even worse than the payroll tax idea. Look, when Obama did it, I was in favor of it because they paid for it. They said, okay, we're going to put money into people's paychecks. It's going to be a couple of bucks a week, and it's going to help a little bit, but we're going to pay for it. We're going to put the billions of dollars into the fund to make sure it's funded for 50 years down the road when you need it. They're not talking about doing any of that. They're going to suck the system dry and kill it off so that it's not going to be there. Their position that, you'll see a UFO before you see a Social Security check, they're trying to make that happen. This is why you don't vote for people who tell you they don't believe in government. That's simple. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you got any questions, comments, please, by all means, send the email. If you missed any of today's program, download the podcast there at thericksmithshow.com. Get the app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.